Our story begins on the border of Kazel's territory. A severe drought plagues a village in the area. The town's well has no water, affecting all the local residents. The cracked earth shows how dry the land is. Even the animals suffer from the consequences. Soon, those who are afraid end up trying to flee during the night. However, Margrave Kazel sees this as a grave offense. When it happens, soldiers are sent in, and they punish the people in brutal ways, worsening the situation even more. None of them are spared from punishment, including defenseless women and children. A boy who was about to be attacked pleads for someone to save them, and this becomes his last wish in life. The one leading the assault is none other than the son of Margrave Kazel. He is a powerful mage who carries in his blood the divine lineage of kings. Upon seeing the situation, he says that even beasts know that favors must be repaid. Calling the people worms, he asks if they don't know why they're still alive, stating it's thanks to him and his family, to the grace of those with divine blood. And even so, they try to run just because it hasn't rained in a while. Then he asks how they dared to be so insolent. Holding her child, a crying woman begs for forgiveness and pleads for her baby. But without a trace of mercy, one of the guards silences her forever. The boy survives, but witnessing his mother like that is deeply shocking. The prince remarks that the guard acted too quickly, ruining his fun. The guard then apologizes for it and asks what he can do to keep his master entertained. Sometime later, the prince walks toward a tree that had been used to hang a few people. Upon seeing that families were separated because of this act, the young master feels pleased. One of the guards brings a wounded man and says that he won't last long enough to serve as entertainment. Then he asks if he should keep the man alive a bit longer. The man's wife begs for his life because she can't bear to see her husband suffer anymore. However, the guard shoves her away as harshly as possible, giving her no chance whatsoever. The man is then hanged alongside the others and becomes entertainment for the prince, which the prince enjoys greatly. He also enjoys seeing the peasant woman in such a pitiful state, using irony to comment on how useful she's being, and not caring at all about her feelings, since to him, these people matter less than animals, until someone shows up and tells the prince not to treat divine blood so frivolously. Then he sees the approaching man, and it turns out to be Lord Zebek. Zebek is the prince's swordsmanship instructor, with enough authority to challenge him. Thus he questions whether it's truly necessary to go so far in punishing the people, saying a noble who inherited divine royal blood should at least maintain his dignity. The arrogant noble replies that his dignity will remain intact as long as news of what happens here doesn't spread elsewhere. He claims these fools dared to stain his honor just because it hasn't rained in a while. That's why they're in this state. Then he asks if Zebek will spread word of what happened here, wanting to know if a holy knight recognized by the king's church will dare to stain the honor of someone who carries so-called noble blood. Zebek simply responds that the truth can't be hidden forever. The noble doesn't quite grasp the weight of that statement until one of his guards offers to handle it, but the noble says there's no need. He only wants a whip, so he grabs the tool and uses it for his own personal amusement, without even waiting for Zebek to leave, because he wanted him to witness it. The prince grows tired after a while, but is pleased to see his target is still standing, claiming that surely this is a sign of loyalty. With that, he leaves the place and says that his instructor should smile more, because life was meant to be enjoyed. Zebek is left alone before a most unpleasant scene. Some time passes and the sun is about to set. Unfortunately, not everyone lived to see it. Among those hanging, there are also some who have fallen, until the man from earlier tries to speak with his wife, Sophia. He tells her that she must run, but she has no intention of doing so, and continues holding on to Ifan, so he doesn't perish. Sophia looks at an emblem, and wonders if the Emperor's heralds will truly appear to help. With that, she is about to lose both hope and strength. Night arrives, and with it, the cold as well, until someone appears to give Sophia some water. She wakes up, having fainted from exhaustion, and asks who is helping her. Zebek tells her to save her strength. He also says he'll give her a bit of food. For Sophia, there's nothing she can do but accept. She then sleeps beneath the knight's cloak, and he keeps her safe while she rests. But upon seeing something approaching, Zebek wakes the woman from her sleep. He says he came there without anyone knowing, but now he must leave, because if caught, his master might punish him. He also says that, as for her husband, there's no more need to hold on to him. She then realizes that Ifan didn't make it, and is in shock upon seeing it. However, she still doesn't want to accept his passing. And to Zebek's surprise, Sophia once again holds her husband's legs. She asks the name of the one who helped her, saying she'll plead with the Herald clan to spare him when they arrive. Zebek asks if she really has any association with that clan. He says those people are enemies of holiness, soulless heretics, and asks if the woman hired them. The knight says he doesn't even know if they truly exist, but even if they do appear, Kozel has 20 well-armed soldiers under his command, not to mention Zebek himself. Besides, the young master is a man of blue blood. He also says the woman should know how incredible divine blood is, the blood of Yegas. But Sophia says that even being a mage, the Herald clan can still defeat Kozel. She also says the reason they are called enemies of holiness is because they earned that name after defeating kings who bore divine blood. The knight says she's not in her right mind, and no one would come out of something like this without being traumatized. Xebec formally introduces himself as a holy knight of the Church of the King. He says he's not revealing his name to be spared or anything like that, because if they truly came, he states he would fight with everything he has. He also says he'll return at night, and after that, he leaves. In turn, Safiya thinks she just has to hold on for 2 more days, because that's the time limit for the clan to arrive. In a flashback, Safiya remembers a moment with her husband. He gave her a gift, specifically the emblem. Safiya asks what it is. Ifen then mentions the heart of the Herald clan and asks if she's ever heard of it. At the time, she had no idea. Her husband says it's a story he heard from his father when he was a boy, about the clan that was an enemy of holiness and also lacked a soul. Ifan says this gold coin is the Emperor's gold. It can summon those who have no soul, but he warns his wife to be careful with that coin, because the king's men may kill anyone who possesses it. Still, in the end, he kisses her, something that made Safiya feel embarrassed. She then asks why he gave her such a dangerous gift. Ifan says he's only giving her this gift in case something terrible happens to them, claiming that, according to legends, if one draws a triangle on the ground and places a gold coin in the center, a herald will come and help, even though he hoped he would never have to do that. Back in the present, Safiya keeps holding on, because she believes she must hold out for the 2 days. However, her willpower is greater than her physical strength, and she ends up suffering from heat stroke. Therefore, she collapses unconscious on the ground, and this time, there's no one to support her. Far from there, at a soldier outpost, some enjoy the abundant water. Among them is Xebec, who notices that today is hotter than usual, until he is approached by Kozel, saying once again that Xebec should smile more. In response, Xebec says that if all the citizens perish, there will be no one left to collect taxes from. But Kozel says the dissatisfied wanderers are on the move, while the number of thefts increases. In the Margrave's territory, there is fertile soil, so people can be evacuated from there. He asks why children who grow corn in fertile soil must suffer because of people without virtue. He's referring to those who ruined agriculture and governance. Agriculture depends on individual skill, on the soil, on the weather, on the sky, and on the king's light. So he asks if that's not what the king and the church teach. Xebec doesn't like the provocation. However, Kozel says the reason they are facing a drought is because they remained faithful to the king's church, since that's what the doctrine teaches. He states this is a broad interpretation. Moreover, one person enriched the soil and another caused the drought. Therefore, the sinners must be punished, and those who helped enrich the land must be given territory. Kozel believes he's doing this to save the people, so anyone who goes against his orders and tries to save these people should do their best to stop him. After that, Kozel continues his journey, and Xebec is not pleased at all, as he was faced with the current state of the city and of the people living in it. This left him quite angry, but he must fulfill the promise he made to Safiya. So he heads over to see how she's doing. Upon reaching the tree, he sees the woman collapse, and realizes that in the end, she couldn't endure it. He also believes that even if the heralds arrive, it will be useless now. Observing the entire scene, Xebec senses a strange presence. Soon realizing someone has gotten too close, a mysterious warrior warns Xebec not to turn around, or he will cut him down. With that, Xebec thinks that for a swordsman to appear out of nowhere without announcing his presence makes him practically a ghost. So he asks if he's a herald. The warrior replies that he is, and asks if Xebec is a knight or a savior. Xebec introduces himself and says he is from the king's church. The herald says he was just asking out of caution, but can already tell Xebec is not a contractor, as a holy knight of the king's church would not make a contract request. In turn, Xebec asks if the opponent is trying to insult him. The herald even considers it an amusing perspective, but upon seeing the fallen girl, he realizes she's the one who summoned him. Then he asks what is going on now. Xebec says that if his opponent puts away his sword and steps back, he promises on his honor to tell the whole truth. So the herald retreats like a shadow, which deeply unsettles Xebec as he starts to believe the man might actually be a ghost. The herald in turn states that Xebec seems confident he wouldn't have been easily struck if not ambushed. He also says that if Xebec truly is a holy knight of the king's church, then he should at least show some courage. Xebec questions whether the opponent is a mage, but the herald says that everyone in his clan is a mage, except for him. The sword master is a little confused, but his opponent warns that for some people, it's really hard to distinguish between superhuman physical strength and magic. Xebec becomes even more confused, and questions the opponent about his classification as a herald. Then Xebec introduces himself once again, saying he is a member of the king's church, With that, the opponent introduces himself as Azadin, one of the 108 spirits, and also a herald of the emperor. Xebec thinks that the 108 spirits are the lowest rank in the herald clan, but the movement Azadin just displayed proves he is far from ordinary. Regardless, Azadin says that as promised, Xebec must now tell him what happened here. After some time talking, Azadin understands what occurred. In any case, the contract was sealed. Then, an owl flies over the area and lands on Azadin's shoulder. The owl says he responded to the request, but the summoner is dead, so Azadin just earned a few gold coins for free. Upon hearing an owl speak, Xebec is quite surprised. The owl, in turn, says they need to move on with the next mission, so they must leave immediately. But before departing, Xebec asks a question. He wants to know if, due to the death of the summoner, the herald will simply leave things as they are and walk away. Azadin asks if he really wants the request to be fulfilled, as his master would suffer. Xebec says that won't happen, because he defeated the opponent beforehand. Azadin says that to imagine being struck down by a sword that remains silent in the face of injustice is truly a sad thought. Even Xebec should know that. The swordsman doesn't like hearing such provocation, but Azadin doesn't stop there and asks if Xebec is angry at himself, since he turned his back on injustice all this time. Xebec retorts, saying the opponent knows nothing about him. Then the herald asks if he knows the constellations in the night sky, their names, and the myths tied to them. In turn, Xebec asks why he's bringing that up now. Azadin says that humans can see the same thing, but feel something different. To some, a person might appear to be the protagonist of a myth, but to others, it may be nothing, just a dim, pale light flickering in the darkness. Just like the sight of them being devastated may look different to Xebec, compared to the eyes of other soldiers. However, Xebec states that he is no different, because he says he can do nothing. As a knight of the Church of the King, he is obligated to revere all those who carry the blood of the king's divine lineage. His opponent says he doesn't wish to fight him, because if he felt pity for the girl, then he doesn't see him as an enemy. Azadin says a knight shouldn't be carrying a shovel, so he'll have no other choice. Xebec realizes what the herald is doing, but he doesn't like the idea of cremating the bodies. However, Azadin insists he will hold a proper funeral. Xebec knows Kozul wants them hung from trees, turned into examples. To bury them would practically be defiance. Even so, Azadin continues with the process, and since he doesn't have a shovel, he digs a hole with his bare hands. Watching the entire scene, the swordsman feels conflicted. He grabs his sword, the one he had long wished to use, and finally puts it to use. The herald is surprised to see this, as the knight decides to help him dig the hole, and so the two of them work together until nightfall. After they finish, Azadin says a prayer to the Archangel of Wisdom and asks him to have mercy on these poor souls. Xebec is surprised that a man from the Herald clan would use such a prayer. Azadin says he likes the ideology. He knows what it looks like, a reckless, shameless man abandoning his birth clan's fate to serve the faith of heresy. But he claims that if he doesn't defend what he believes is right, then his birth has no meaning at all. Xebec then asks what he likes about the Herald clan. Without answering directly, Azadin reaches for his equipment and pulls out a flexible bow. After that, he says someone whom the knight reveres is approaching. At this, Xebec is startled. Soon he sees a fleet of armed soldiers arriving. Leading them is Kozul on his horse. He says Xebec really liked that girl from the countryside and admits she was very good for a peasant from the backlands. Realizing he's been discovered and that there are around 20 heavily armed soldiers, Xebec thinks that no matter how skilled he is, he doesn't stand a chance. Meanwhile, Kozul sees that his instructor is a company and asks who that man at his side is. Without wasting time, Azadin fires an arrow, but he aims at one of the soldiers and hits him squarely. The wounded soldier screams in pain, frightening his fellow squadmate. Xebec wonders why the herald chose to shoot a soldier at the back of the formation instead of the front. Azadin doesn't care for talk and fires another of his arrows. Upon seeing this, the soldiers prepare themselves and form up their shield wall, but one of the soldiers at the front is shocked when his shield is struck because the arrow broke his defense. Not only that, it pierced through the shield. Once hit, he falls, as the wound he received was quite severe. With that, all the soldiers were frightened, even Xebec, who had never seen anything like it before. Azadin recalls that he was questioned earlier about his choices. He then reveals that he joined the clan because he liked the idea that a person's worth is not determined by their birth, but by their beliefs and actions. Just as someone born with the blood of the divine king, who uses their position to take advantage of their people, cannot be considered a noble. Upon hearing that, Kozul becomes extremely enraged and threatens Azadin. Being challenged in such a way, Kozul orders Xebec to defeat the stranger. However, Azadin leaps as high as he can, and from above, prepares to shoot arrows. The soldiers on the ground are impressed, and Azadin takes advantage of this distraction. He fires multiple arrows at them. He uses the distance to his advantage, giving him a superior vantage point, striking several soldiers at once. But soon after, he returns to the ground, and one of the soldiers tries to strike him. However, Azadin's skills are far more impressive than his enemy imagined. He manages to land on the enemy's spear and takes the opportunity to leap again. While airborne, he fires more arrows at the soldiers, always hitting them with precise accuracy. He also fires at Kozel, but the arrow merely grazes him, hitting a soldier who was standing nearby. Kozel then realizes that his opponent does not intend to hurt him, only to destabilize him in order to make him give up, until he asks the enemy who he is. Azadin appears behind Kozel and formally introduces himself. He also says he's a herald. Hearing that shocks Kozel, not just him, but his soldiers as well. That alone is enough to make them afraid. Azadin, now out of arrows, states that he doesn't need them to defeat Kozel. He immediately switches to close quarters combat. After that, he disassembles his bow and straps it to his waist just like it was before. With that, he positions himself beneath the noble's horse. The soldiers who are still standing try to go on the offensive, but when they attack, they can't land a single blow. Azadin, in turn, takes the opportunity to counterattack. He states that he already reduced the number of soldiers with his arrows, so now it's easier to finish off the rest. Then he remembers something. He picks up a sword from the ground and strikes down its former owner, something the soldiers don't take well, and they call him a lunatic for doing it. From afar, Azadin's owl watches everything. His battle against the soldiers ends quickly, and Azadin didn't even get injured. He approaches the insolent noble and says his time has come, because someone who used people for his own pleasure for so long cannot go unpunished just like that. However, Kozel uses his powers to try and defend himself. He doesn't even care about his soldiers, as they are struck and even blinded by the bright light. But his desperation only drives him to escape at all costs. He uses his magic, saying that only a noble like him has the right to possess such power. But he didn't expect that his opponent would be unaffected by such magic. Azadin takes the opportunity to strike the noble, which makes Kozel realize that his powers won't save him. He then feels the pain of being hit and screams as if it's something he has never felt before. Then he asks why his opponent doesn't just finish it already. Azadin says the noble must have mental issues for not understanding what's happening. Kozel, in turn, tries to negotiate and offers everything he has in exchange for his life. But Azadin says he's a herald, and for that reason already has everything he needs. With nothing else to say, Kozel tries to appeal to his instructor and begs him for help, but Zebek says he can't see due to the flash of light. So Kozel curses him with every insult he can think of. Sarcastically, Azadin says that, just as he imagined, Kozel still has plenty of vigor. He adds that this is actually a good thing, something only special people like him can possess. Then, Azadin makes sure that, just like the soldiers, Kozel will never see again. With his own hands, he does it, inflicting upon the arrogant noble the same pain he had once caused others. Azadin says that even without a summoner, he considered carrying out the task, and declares that the Emperor's law has been fulfilled. After all that, Zebek draws his sword, and once again states that he is a knight of the king's church. Therefore, he says he cannot allow Azadin to simply walk away. No matter if he committed just acts, merely working for the Herald clan makes him an enemy. In turn, Azadin shows no intent to fight, and says Zebek is not like the other knights. But the Swordmaster takes that as an insult, and gets angry even though Azadin assures him it wasn't meant as offense. He simply says that the order Zebek follows is made up of scoundrels expelled from their homes over inheritance disputes. However, from everything he's seen, he believes Zebek is different. He also says Zebek can abandon that order and join him in the Herald clan. The knight is surprised by the invitation. Azadin says they will meet again someday, and after that, departs. He vanishes like a shadow, leaving Zebek even more stunned. The Swordmaster reflects that no one has managed to defeat Azadin. Instead, they were all left with permanent losses. Azadin called them scoundrels expelled from their homes over inheritance disputes, and even though it made him angry, Zebek admits the opponent wasn't wrong in that statement, but he also thinks that it applies to him as well. Now he feels a weight lifting from his chest. At another time, in the royal hall, some people go to the king to plead for lower taxes this year. They claim that more and more people are leaving their villages and becoming nomads, as that is better than living under so much oppression. However, while wandering out there, they have to face monsters and even thieves, which is why they want fewer taxes so they won't suffer the same fate. Upon hearing this, King Margrave Kezel finds it shameful. He says that at this rate, these people in front of him will start asking for rations too. Embarrassed by the king's remark, the man begs on behalf of the others for change. His Highness says that nothing will change the humble blood flowing within that man, so if he desires relief, then so be it. After that, the man even becomes hopeful and asks if the king is serious. His king affirms that he is. However, he says there is a condition. If they cannot fulfill the king's request, all of them will be imprisoned and punished. The people there were not expecting that, as this was a major twist, but the king tells them not to worry, because what they are asking for amounts to just a single page, claiming that such is the nature of this grimoire. Their leader says he's ignorant when it comes to magic and doesn't know the details of what he just heard. However, the king says it is something very simple, that even fools can understand, and declares that whatever the man merely wishes for, it will respond to his call and reveal itself. So if he manages to get a grimoire like that for his king, his entire village will be exempt from taxes for 3 years and receive 50 bushels of wheat, barley, and oats. The man then says they at least need to know the name of the grimoire so they can search for it. His Highness then says he is referring to a copy of the Divine King's book, something so grand that it leaves the man in shock. After everyone leaves, the king rests on his throne. Soon after, a serpent approaches and stands before him. The king looks coldly at it. Then the serpent transforms into a woman and says she heard the king mention the name of the Divine King's book, warning that it was careless of him. In turn, the king says that the witches are already searching for the grimoire everywhere. Rumors will spread across the continent anyway. It would be wiser to at least find a page before that happens. Then the witch says that the king's son was a victim of violence. The king says that Kozel's forces wouldn't fall so easily, as Knight Zebek is with his son. However, the witch reveals that the opponent is from the Herald clan. Such a revelation catches the king by surprise, but he thinks the Herald clan must also be after the Divine King's book. If they wish to free themselves from the curse of duty, they'll surely need the Divine King's book, so he asks if his son has died. The witch says no, but reveals that Kozel was severely wounded in the eyes and reproductive organs, so the king orders soldiers to be sent to defeat the entire Herald clan. In turn, the witch says she'll contact the commander of the army, but the king wants someone else to do it. Since his son is now incapable of procreation, he will have to make another heir. Thus, he needs the witch's help for that. Far from there, under the scorching desert heat, Azadin realizes he has run out of water and says this is bad, as he still has a long road ahead. He wonders why he had to accept the mission and claim he could complete it in just 2 days, until his owl scolds him and asks if he dares speak so impertinently about the emperor. Azadin says that since the emperor died without any plan for his heralds, they are now despised by people all over the world. Besides, he gave up carrying luggage and ran straight to the mission, which is why he's thirsty, and all he has is food so dry that it's ineatable. The owl apologizes for what it said. Then both see something approaching. In turn, Azadin thinks they might be ghosts, and in front of him, something begins to manifest, until he realizes it's the souls of the people who perished in the trees. Among the souls are even Ifan and Safiya. Upon seeing all those souls, Azadin asks what they want from him. One of them replies that this land has neither the light of the king's virtue nor the blessing of the archangels, so it is not good to remain here for long. Azadin says he has repaid their grief and asks them to move on to the afterlife. Safiya points to a well nearby. With that, Azadin understands that they only wanted to help him. Dying of thirst, he goes to the well and begins to pull up the bucket. From the weight, he assumes the well is full of water. But as soon as he sees what's inside the bucket, he realizes it's just sand, and in the middle of it, a mysterious piece of paper. The clan of Heralds was originally a race known as the Aragasa. They crossed a massive typhoon from another continent and landed on the continent of Wybris. The 8 divine kings of the Yagas family ruled the continent of Wybris and originally had 8 thrones. However, during that era, one person monopolized all 8 thrones, and the other 7 kings, the Jolie brothers, were all subjugated, all by the emperor of the Yeslat family. The emperor, Yeslat, wanted to eliminate all remaining descendants of the deceased sacred kings. Meanwhile, the foreign Aragasa needed land to settle in, so the emperor gave them the grimoire called the Song of the Yellow Bird, along with a spirit known as the Emperor's Voice. In return, the foreigners signed a contract with the emperor and became his herald. With that, the hands of the Aragasa were mercilessly stained with the blood of God. They became the ultimate authority and personally eliminated the corrupt nobles who violated the emperor's law and prospered. It was the most horrible sin the citizens of Wybris could imagine, as they believed in the afterlife and the cycle of eternal life. Because of this, the emperor died and the empire was split into 8 separate kingdoms once more. Aragasa were despised by the people of Wybris, and the heralds fell from grace, being called Soulless Herald. But they faced an unexpected problem. The contract with the emperor was still in effect. Even after the emperor's death, the heralds were still bound to serve as the emperor's heralds forever. Back to the present moment, Azadin picks up the paper and wonders if it might be a page from the Book of the Divine King, the source of the empire's power. He thanks the souls for their help and wishes them peace. and questions whether collecting these pages will really free him from the curse of duty. But he himself feels it's rude to call it a curse, concluding instead that it's an honorable duty under the contract. However, his owl says he doesn't seem happy, and asks if this isn't what all heralds wish for. The owl tells him to fulfill his service duties and collect gold coins, and to acquire the Book of the Divine King, for that is how he can escape the curse of duty. Azadin says that is the goal of the heralds, but he's concerned that this is beginning to spread throughout the world. He also says the reason the Book of the Divine King was torn in the first place was because of his father. But now he can only think about water and how thirsty he is. As he walks through the desert, Azadin doesn't realize he's being followed and watched from afar. A girl looks at him and says she's found the one she was looking for, calling him the son of the worst traitor in the clan, claiming that he's talentless, powerless, and stupid, and asks if he really can't use magic, like the rumors say. Her companion replies that he doesn't know if Azadin is cursed, but he's certain he can't use magic. The girl mentions a rumor that Azadin wet the bed until he was 8, and that he doesn't even know how to tie a bowstring. She immediately doubts that he can fulfill a herald's duty. The boy calls her Lady Midiam, and suggests they go back, claiming there's no need to work for the lowest-ranking herald when she's related to the summoner. But going against that, she says she wants to test her skills, then fires an arrow, declaring that if she wins, she'll take Azadin's position, and that there's no way she could lose to him. Her companion warns that Azadin is a student of the strict elder Kazas, and believes there's always a but in every situation. But to Midiam, no matter how incredible Kazas is, an idiot is still an idiot, even if they train for 10 or even 100 years. She can't accept that the son of a traitor who can't even use magic is a herald, believing that Azadin is just taking up space, and that's why competent people like her can't become heralds. With that, she fires the arrow. But before checking whether she hit or not, she hides behind a rock until her curiosity grows, and she decides to take a look, only to get hit in the forehead by a thrown rock. Her companion becomes concerned for her. However, Azadin shows up right after, and asks if she was the one who shot that arrow. Midiam tries to deflect, and is surprised that Azadin got close so fast, since she hadn't even sensed his presence. She is even more surprised to see that Azadin caught the arrow she fired, and not only that, he stored it in his own quiver. In turn, Azadin asks for their names. Midiam introduces herself formally, and Ishmael does too, saying he's from Aether. Ishmael also says they were sent there to assist Azadin. He then asks why he was attacked. Midiam replies that he was out of arrows, and she only wanted to give him a few so he wouldn't be left without any. Azadin understands her intention and says she volunteered to be his assistant just because staying in the Holy Land was boring. Therefore, he tells the two kids to go back. But Midiam doesn't like being called that and says she can't be treated like this since she's of Aetherian bloodline. In turn, Azadin says she should know that bloodlines mean nothing to the heralds, and if she came there to give assistance, she is now his subordinate. He also says maybe she wants to learn how to shoot arrows properly, since she didn't learn it right back in the Holy Land. With that, Midiam realizes that Azadin is different from what the rumors said, and wonders if this is really the guy everyone used to mock. Azadin says Midiam should show more respect to him if she wants to learn anything, and asks if she's going to behave like a member of Aragasa or like an enemy. Even though she doesn't like this situation, Midiam apologizes and says she'll act from now on like a true member of the clan. Azadin says he accepts the apology, but tells her she must not fire any more arrows without permission, because weapons are not toys, so if it's not to shoot at an enemy, then she shouldn't be playing with her bow. After that, he says he doesn't need assistance and orders them to go back home. But before walking away, Azadin asks if they have any spare water. However, in her stubbornness, Midiam challenges him to a duel. Her companion insists she shouldn't do this, saying it's dangerous. But for Midiam, even if Azadin is different from the rumors, she refuses to cower before him and believes such a duel is undeniable. So she officially challenges Azadin to a duel, claiming she wants his position in the Herald clan. After challenging Azadin to a duel, Midiam remains serious while her companion laments for her. Azadin says that Ariel's has been a bad influence on these kids. He understands what the girl wants, but asks what will happen if he wins. Midiam says that if that happens, he'll have everything that's hers, including control of her life. With that, Azadin realizes the problem goes beyond Ariel's, as he sees the girl is grossly underestimating him. Then he tells Midiam she should give up before it's too late, saying that Ariel's is the only one who can be a herald. Azadin knows he doesn't have the best reputation, but claims they didn't give him this position for nothing. Midiam, in turn, starts shouting for everyone to hear that she wants to duel Azadin for his herald position. Soon after, a voice declares that the duel has been accepted and will take place. Midiam then recognizes the voice as the Emperor's. Azadin recognizes it too, and can't believe this is really happening. But the most shocked of all is Ishmael. He knows the Emperor's voice is a spirit assigned to every herald. Now that it has become a witness, refusing the challenge is impossible. Therefore, he fears for Midiam, but she, herself, is determined to win. A short time passes and the duel is already over. Azadin takes some of their water. Midiam didn't stand a chance and is deeply frustrated. Even knowing this was somewhat obvious, Ishmael wonders what just happened. He saw Azadin use an archery technique suited for the battlefield, sacrificing precision for projectile speed. It was definitely an extreme form of Aragasa technique. When bombarded, Midiam tried to hide and defend herself with magic. However, Azadin's combat technique was so precise that for a novice like her, defending against it was practically impossible. Azadin only didn't finish her off because he didn't want to. Ishmael thought Azadin didn't know how to use magic, but he used the beauty of nature, the yellow crane, something Ishmael can't believe he witnessed. During the fight, Midiam was completely lost. Her lack of combat experience against a fighter of this level was obvious. Even so, her bravery didn't let her back down. She advanced toward a rock, thinking that Azadin was hiding there. As she approached, she realized her guess was correct, so she thought that was her advantage and tried to attack in close combat. However, upon striking Azadin, she realized it was just a clone. Midiam was in disbelief for having fallen into that trap, but before she could do anything, Azadin appeared behind her. Her companion warned her, so she tried to use her magic to defend herself. But Azadin's speed was greater. He got close to the girl and broke through her defense, saying that this was her end. Midiam panicked upon being caught. Right after, she was hit so hard that she was thrown against a nearby rock. Seeing that, Ishmael grew worried about his companion and couldn't believe that an experienced warrior had struck a little girl with such force. So he thought it was extremely unfair and felt compelled to go after Azadin. But right then, the voice that had previously authorized the duel now announced its end. The voice also said that Midiam of Aether challenged Azadin's position as herald and lost, so her fate now rested in the hands of Herald Azadin and Ishmael. And due to Ishmael's interference in the duel, he too would become the property of the herald, along with Midiam. Hearing this left the girl deeply frustrated, to the point that she tried something foolish. She then decided to attempt something against herself to avoid fulfilling the duel's payment. But before she could do it, Azadin stopped her. As he took the tool from her hands, Azadin said he had expected she'd try something like that. Her companion, however, couldn't believe she had actually attempted it. Then Azadin said that Midiam lost the duel, so she had no right to perish without his permission and could only do so if ordered. He also asked if she hadn't thought carefully before challenging him to a duel and offering such a reward. After finishing the water, Azadin handed the bottle back to Ishmael. He said that everything that happened was enough for them to learn a valuable lesson, and then said they were free to go. Azadin said he would pretend the duel never happened, because it would be bad for them if this went on their records. With that, Azadin felt it was time to leave, so he stood up to go. But upon seeing the two again, he said he didn't need them, which is why he released them, and now told them they should go home. However, Midiam said that Azadin had a beautiful and talented girl tied to him, so she thought it was foolish to let her go. Azadin didn't know what to say about the beautiful part, but stated that if Midiam were as talented as Ariel, she wouldn't have lost. He said there are many guys who like young girls, and that's bad, so it would have been wise to think before proposing such a duel. In fact, he told her to never challenge anyone to a duel again, because if there's someone she needs to kill, she should do it without hesitation. Ishmael thought Azadin talked a lot more than he expected, but it seemed like he was saying all this out of genuine concern. However, he noticed that Midiam didn't seem to share the same view. Right after, Midiam said that what she had just heard was new to her.